The rain had been falling for hours, turning the parking lot behind Daisy's diner into a mirror of trembling lights. Lena Morales sat behind the wheel of her old blue car, her hands tight on the steering wheel. The engine had died halfway through her night shift, and now it refused to start. Her 8-year-old daughter, Maya, sat curled in the back seat, clutching a small backpack that looked far too heavy for her thin shoulders. "Mom, are we going to be stuck here all night?" the girl asked softly. Lena forced a smile. "Of course not, honey. Just a little trouble. We'll figure it out." But she didn't know how. Her phone battery was nearly dead. The diner had already closed, and the few people passing by pretended not to see her. The rain drummed against the roof like a slow heartbeat. Then, from the far end of the lot, a faint beam of light appeared, a flashlight, swinging in a steady hand. A tall man in a worn army jacket was walking toward them, his steps heavy but sure. His gray hood was soaked, his face hidden beneath the shadow of the rain. "Need a hand, ma'am?" His voice was rough, yet strangely calm. Lena hesitated. She saw the rusted pickup truck parked under a flickering street lamp and realized he must have been sleeping in it. Every instinct told her to be cautious, but then she looked at Maya, who was shivering. The man stood still, keeping his distance, as if careful not to scare them. "I just need to jump the battery," Lena said, "but I don't have cables." "I do," he replied. "Been fixing engines since I was a kid. Mind if I take a look?" Something in his tone, quiet, respectful, made her nod. He moved slowly, lifting the hood with practiced hands. In the dim light, she saw the faint scars on his wrists, the calluses of someone used to hard work. Steam rose from the engine as rain hissed on the metal. "What's your name?" she asked. "Aaron," he said. "Aaron Brooks." He attached the cables, connecting his truck to her car. Sparks flashed briefly. The smell of wet asphalt filled the air. "Try it now," he said. The engine coughed, then roared to life. Maya gasped in relief and clapped her hands. "You did it!" Aaron gave a small smile. "She just needed a bit of power. Happens to all of us sometimes." Lena laughed quietly, half from nerves, half from gratitude. She reached into her purse, pulled out a few crumpled bills. "Please, take this." He shook his head. "Keep it. Just get her home safe." But Maya, with her childish honesty, leaned forward from the back seat. "Then at least take this," she said, holding out a small cupcake wrapped in a napkin, the last one from her birthday box. The candle had melted away hours ago, but she offered it as if it were a treasure. Aaron looked at the little treat, then at her wide brown eyes. After a moment, he accepted it, careful not to touch her hand. "Thank you, kiddo," he said softly. "That means more than you think." As Lena closed the car door, she noticed something odd. Aaron had bent down to pick up a small notebook that must have fallen from her seat, a weathered, leather-bound journal she used to jot down thoughts for work. He brushed off the rain and handed it to her through the window. "Yours, I think." "Yes, thank you," she said, taking it back, but he didn't let go immediately. "Do you mind if I read the first line?" he asked with a faint smile. Sometimes words tell more than faces. Lena blinked, unsure why he cared. "Go ahead." He read the top line aloud softly. "One day, someone kind will find us. And maybe that will be enough." For a second, neither spoke. The rain eased, leaving only the steady hum of the engine. Aaron finally stepped back, tucking his flashlight into his pocket. "Seems like that day came early," he said, half smiling. "Drive safe, Ms. Morales." Lena watched him return to his pickup, his jacket clinging to his shoulders, his figure fading into the drizzle. She couldn't explain why her chest felt tight. Maybe relief, maybe something else. Maya whispered, "Mom, he looked lonely." Lena nodded slowly. "Yes, sweetheart, maybe more than we know." As she pulled out of the lot, the headlights swept across the man's old truck. Through the window, she saw him break the cupcake in half, placing one piece beside a folded photograph on the dashboard before biting into the other. "Ash." The gesture was so gentle, so human, it stayed with her the entire drive home. She didn't know that in that quiet, rain-soaked parking lot, something had shifted, a connection born of chance, kindness, and unfinished stories. And neither of them could have guessed how that small moment would change both their lives forever. The sun had barely climbed above the rooftops when the smell of coffee drifted from Daisy's diner. The storm had passed, leaving puddles scattered like forgotten mirrors across the cracked asphalt. Inside, Lena Morales moved briskly between tables, her uniform still damp at the edges from the night before. She was trying to focus on orders and smiles, but her mind kept circling back to the man in the rain, Aaron Brooks. He had vanished before dawn, leaving nothing behind but a faint tire mark near the dumpster. She didn't even know where he slept or if he had anywhere to go. Rick, the diner's manager, was in one of his moods again. He leaned against the counter, stirring his coffee like it owed him money. His voice cut through the clatter of plates. "Lena, next time your car breaks down, call someone who belongs here, not some drifter with a beard and a stolen truck." Lena froze. "You saw him?" "Everyone saw him," Rick scoffed. "That guy's been hanging around the lot for weeks. Gives customers the creeps. We run a family diner, not a shelter." Before Lena could answer, the bell over the door chimed. Heads turned. Aaron walked in holding an old toolbox under one arm and wearing the same worn jacket from the night before. His clothes were still damp at the cuffs, but his posture was steady, proud in a quiet way. "Morning," he said, nodding politely toward the room. "I came to pay for the coffee you folks gave me last night. I didn't have cash then." Rick's eyes narrowed. "We didn't serve you anything." Aaron nodded calmly. "No, but I took a cup someone left on the counter. Didn't feel right keeping it." He placed a few coins on the counter. The sound was small but clear in the silence. Some of the regulars exchanged looks, a mixture of curiosity and judgment. Lena stepped closer, her tray trembling slightly in her hand. "You don't have to do that," she said softly. "It was just coffee." Aaron shook his head. "A man should pay his debts, ma'am, even for kindness." Rick laughed under his breath. "That's cute. You think a few coins make you respectable? Maybe use that honesty to find a real job instead of bothering my staff." Lena's face hardened. "He's not bothering anyone." "Oh, really?" Rick turned to the crowd, raising his voice. "Ask our customers. Who wants to eat pancakes with a guy sleeping in a truck outside?" A few people looked away, pretending not to hear. One woman muttered something about safety. The tension thickened like the steam above the coffee pots. Aaron didn't react. He simply took a breath, gathered his coins, and said, "Didn't mean to cause trouble. I'll be on my way." He turned toward the door, but Lena's voice stopped him. "Wait." She looked straight at Rick. "Do you even realize what you're saying? That man helped me last night when no one else did. He fixed my car in the rain while you were home sleeping." The diner went still. Rick blinked, caught off guard. "You're saying this guy?" "Yes," she interrupted, her voice trembling but clear. "My daughter was with me. He made sure we got home safe." Aaron shifted uncomfortably, not used to being defended. "You don't have to." "I do," she said, meeting his eyes. "Because people like you shouldn't have to explain decency." Rick's smirk faltered, but pride kept him talking. "You sure he didn't set that up? You ever think maybe that's his trick? Break a car, fix it, earn sympathy?" The words hit the room like a slap. A few customers murmured in agreement, more out of habit than belief. Aaron's jaw tightened. He reached for his toolbox, but his hands were steady. "You can believe what you want," he said quietly. "I didn't come here for anyone's approval." He walked out into the pale morning light, the doorbell chiming softly behind him. For a moment, no one moved. Lena's chest felt hollow, a rush of guilt and frustration filling the space he left. Rick cleared his throat. "See, dramatic types, always playing the victim." But outside, through the diner window, Lena could see Aaron kneeling beside an old woman's car that had stalled near the curb. He didn't even look back. He simply opened the hood and began working. His sleeves rolled up, his movements calm and sure. The woman's engine came to life within minutes. She smiled, pressed something into his hand, and drove off. Aaron didn't pocket the money. He slipped it under a napkin on the bench before walking away. Lena stood there, watching him through the glass, her hands trembling slightly. Around her, the diner's chatter returned, but it sounded smaller now, emptier. She didn't know what compelled her, only that she couldn't let the moment fade. She untied her apron, ignoring Rick's glare, and stepped outside into the fresh morning air. Aaron was already at his truck, packing his tools. She called out softly, "Aaron, wait!" He turned, eyes wary but kind. "Thank you," she said simply, "for last night, for today." He nodded once, "Just doing what I can." And, before she could say anything more, he started the engine of his old pickup, a sound rough but steady, like the man himself, and drove off down the quiet street. Lena stood there for a long moment, her reflection faint in the diner window, wondering why the simple act of watching him leave felt heavier than she expected. Inside, Rick's voice carried faintly through the door. "You'll see, Lena, people like him always come back for something. But as she looked toward the road, she had the strange feeling that Aaron Brooks was the only one in that town who wanted nothing at all. And deep down, she also knew this wasn't the last time their paths would cross. 2 mornings later, Daisy's diner was busier than usual. The breakfast crowd filled every booth, silverware clinking in rhythm with old country songs coming from the jukebox. The air smelled of bacon and syrup, yet beneath the comfort, a quiet tension lingered. A shadow left over from the scene a few days earlier. Lena tried to shake it off, focusing on pouring coffee and smiling at customers, but she kept glancing out the large window that faced the parking lot. She didn't know why. Maybe she expected to see that old truck again, sitting in the corner near the dumpster. And then just before noon, she did. Aaron's truck rolled slowly into the lot. He stepped out with his toolbox, his jacket cleaner than before, his posture straighter. His presence made a few customers whisper. Even Rick noticed from behind the counter, his eyes narrowing. "Not again," he muttered. Outside, a woman in a red coat stood beside her car, frustrated. The hood was open, steam rising from it. Aaron approached her quietly. "Ma'am, looks like you've got a fuel relay issue," he said, his tone calm. "I can fix it for you. Won't take 5 minutes." The woman hesitated, then nodded. She looked at him like she wasn't sure whether to trust him or not. But desperation outweighed doubt. Within minutes, Aaron worked his way through the engine with the precision of someone who had done it 100 times. His movements were sure and measured, not rushed. Inside, the customers started watching. Someone whispered, "That's the same guy from last week, right?" Another said, "Didn't he get thrown out?" Rick stepped outside, wiping his hands on a rag, his tone sharp. "Hey, what did I tell you? You can't hang around here, fixing cars for tips. You're scaring people off." Aaron straightened slowly. "I'm just helping. She was stuck." Rick laughed. "Helping? Or pretending so you can charge her later?" The woman looked startled. "He didn't ask for a dime." "Maybe not yet," Rick snapped. "But I know how this goes. They start with kindness and end with trouble." Aaron's jaw tightened, but his eyes stayed calm. "You're making this bigger than it is," he said quietly. "The car's done. That's all." Rick's voice rose. "You think you can talk back to me? This is private property." By now, people had stepped out of the diner, drawn by the argument. Phones lifted. Screens glowed. A few were already recording. Lena rushed out, her apron still on. "Rick, that's enough," she said firmly. "He's not hurting anyone." Rick turned to her. "You really want to defend him again? Maybe you like the attention." The words hit her harder than she expected. A flicker of embarrassment passed through her face, but she didn't back down. "You don't know what you're talking about." Aaron moved between them, calm but resolute. "She doesn't need to defend me," he said. "If I'm a problem, I'll leave." He turned to pack up his tools, but the woman whose car he'd fixed spoke up. "Wait," she said, holding up her phone. "I have a timer running. He fixed it in 4 minutes flat. You owe him an apology." Laughter rippled through the small crowd. Rick's face turned red. "Apology? For what? For keeping this place safe?" At that moment, the hum of an approaching police car filled the air. The patrol vehicle stopped beside the lot, lights flashing faintly. An officer stepped out, scanning the scene. "Got a call about a disturbance," he said. "What's going on?" Rick folded his arms. "This man's been loitering, harassing customers." Aaron didn't move. "I was fixing her car, that's it." The officer looked between them, then to the woman in the red coat. "Ma'am, is that true?" She nodded firmly. "Yes, sir. He didn't ask for anything. He just helped." The officer studied Aaron a moment longer, then said, "You got ID." Aaron reached into his pocket and handed over a folded veteran's card, faded around the edges. The officer's eyes softened slightly as he read it. "You served?" Aaron nodded. "Long time ago." The officer handed it back. "Then I think we're done here. Folks, maybe next time let kindness do its job before we call for backup." A quiet laugh rolled through the crowd. The police car pulled away. The woman in the red coat thanked Aaron once more before driving off, leaving the air still and heavy. Rick's voice broke the silence. "This isn't over," he muttered, turning back toward the diner. "You can't just waltz in here like a hero." Aaron said nothing. He gathered his tools, his eyes fixed on the ground. Lena stepped closer. "I'm sorry," she said softly. He shouldn't have called them." Aaron shook his head. "It's fine, I'm used to it." She wanted to say more, to tell him he didn't deserve this, but words failed her. He lifted his toolbox, nodded once, and started walking toward his truck. His boots splashed through the shallow puddles that hadn't yet dried from the storm. Lena watched him go, feeling the same ache she'd felt that first night. The ache of knowing something about this man carried a story deeper than the surface showed. As Aaron climbed into his truck, a gust of wind swept across the lot, carrying with it the sound of Rick's laughter from inside the diner. And though Aaron didn't turn around, his hand lingered on the steering wheel, his jaw set tight. For the first time, a flicker of anger crossed his calm face, not for himself, but for the world that no longer believed in good intentions. He started the engine, the rumble echoing across the parking lot like a heartbeat that refused to die. Lena stood watching until the sound faded down the road, unaware that this confrontation, small as it seemed, had just set the next chain of events in motion. The afternoon sun hung low over the town, washing the diner windows in a tired orange glow. Business had slowed, the air thick with the smell of coffee gone stale. Lena wiped down the last table, her mind still replaying the scene from earlier that morning. Aaron standing in the lot, calm against the weight of a dozen accusing eyes. Rick had spent the day grumbling under his breath about troublemakers, but Lena barely heard him. She couldn't shake the image of the officer handing Aaron that worn veteran's card. A man like that, quiet and disciplined, didn't fit the story Rick kept spinning. When her shift finally ended, she stepped outside and saw something that made her pause. Aaron's truck was parked under the same flickering streetlight, his toolbox open on the ground. He was kneeling beside one of the tires, tightening a bolt with slow precision. For a moment, she considered walking away, but her feet refused to move. "Aaron," she called softly. He looked up, surprised but not unkind. "You're still here." "I wanted to make sure you were all right," she said. "Rick shouldn't have treated you like that." Aaron shrugged. "It's not the first time someone thought the worst of me. Won't be the last." Lena stepped closer, her hands tucked into her jacket pockets. "You don't have to get used to it." He gave a faint smile. "That's generous of you to say." They stood there for a while, the hum of distant traffic filling the quiet. She noticed the small scar that ran across his temple, the faded edges of the army patch still sewn on his sleeve. "You served?" she asked. He nodded. "Mechanic unit, mostly medical transport." "That explains how you fixed my car so fast," she said, smiling. He chuckled. "Old habits. Engines don't talk back. People do." The simplicity of the line made her chest tighten. She hesitated, then held out a small paper bag. "Dinner," she said. "It's not much, but I thought you might want something warm." Aaron blinked, caught off guard. "You didn't have to." "Maybe not," she said, "but you didn't have to help me either." He accepted the bag quietly. As he reached for it, something slipped from his jacket. A small metal tag, its chain tangled near the collar. It hit the pavement with a faint metallic tap. Lena bent to pick it up before he could. The surface was scratched and worn, but one detail froze her in place. The engraved date, April 12th. Her heart stumbled. That date had been burned into her memory for years. The night her husband, Miguel, died in a highway accident just outside the city. Aaron saw her expression and reached out gently. "It's just an old tag," he said quickly, "from someone I tried to save." Her eyes lifted to his. "Save?" He hesitated, the silence stretching thin between them. Finally, he said quietly, "I was driving back from base when it happened. A crash on the highway, a car overturned. The driver was trapped. I did what I could, but..." His voice trailed off. "I couldn't get him out before the fire." Lena's hands trembled as she held the tag. "My husband's car caught fire that night. He was trapped too." Aaron froze. "Where?" "Outside the city," she whispered, "near the overpass. They said someone tried to help him, but no one ever found out who." Aaron's eyes darkened with recognition. "The silver wedding band," he said softly. He kept touching it, even when he was fading. He asked someone to tell his wife he was sorry he couldn't say goodbye. The world around them seemed to fall away. The sound of the street, the rustle of wind, everything vanished. Only their breaths remained, uneven and quiet. Lena pressed the tag into his palm, her voice breaking. "It was you." Aaron looked down at the tag, his fingers curling around it like it burned. "I failed him," he said hoarsely. "I've replayed that night every day since." "No," she said, shaking her head. "You didn't fail him. You gave him a chance to say goodbye. I thought he died alone." He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. He wasn't alone. For a long moment, neither spoke. The sun dipped behind the buildings, leaving them in the soft half-light of evening. Finally, Lena said, "Maybe you're the reason I kept believing in kindness, even when I didn't know why." Aaron didn't answer. He just looked at her, the lines on his face softening, as if something heavy inside him had loosened for the first time in years. She managed a faint smile. "You should keep it," she said, nodding at the tag. "It's part of both our stories now." He held the tag against his chest, his voice low. "Then maybe it's time that story started meaning something good." Lena exhaled slowly. "Maybe it already does." As she turned to leave, the wind picked up, carrying the faint sound of laughter from inside the diner. Rick's, sharp and careless. Aaron's eyes followed Lena until she disappeared around the corner, the metal tag glinting in the fading light. He didn't know it yet, but the secret that connected their pasts had just tied their futures together in ways neither of them could yet understand. The night after their conversation, Lena couldn't sleep. The words Aaron had said kept looping in her mind like an old song stuck on replay. He wasn't alone. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of traffic outside her small apartment. Maya slept soundly beside her, one arm wrapped around the stuffed bear she never let go of. The steady rhythm of her daughter's breathing should have brought peace, but instead it only reminded Lena of the quiet emptiness that had filled her nights since the accident. She rose quietly, careful not to wake Maya, and sat by the window. The streetlights below flickered, painting thin gold lines across the floor. Her thoughts drifted back to the dog tag, to Aaron's tired eyes when he held it. There was truth in them, heavy, painful, but honest. Still, a small part of her needed to know more. The next morning, she made an excuse to leave work early. Rick didn't argue. He was too busy muttering about weekend deliveries. The air outside was warm, and sunlight danced across the diner's neon sign. She followed the familiar road toward the edge of town where she'd seen Aaron park his truck before, behind an old warehouse near the railroad tracks. The truck sat there, quiet, a thin layer of dust gathering on its surface. She hesitated at first, then knocked gently on the door. No answer. Through the small back window, she could see the clutter of a life lived out of boxes. A blanket folded over the passenger seat, a half-empty thermos, and on the dashboard, a leather-bound notebook. Her heart skipped. The same one he had picked up from her car that first night. She told herself she shouldn't, that it was private, but curiosity had a voice stronger than guilt. The door was unlocked. She opened it slowly, the hinges creaking like they were warning her to stop. Inside, everything smelled faintly of oil and rain. She picked up the notebook. Its cover was worn soft from years of use, and the pages inside were filled with sketches, detailed, careful, almost hauntingly precise. There were drawings of engines, old cars, and medical diagrams, but near the middle, her hands froze. She turned a page and saw a pencil sketch of a wrecked sedan flipped on its side, the same model her husband had driven. Around it, tiny notes covered the margins. Driver still breathing. Fire spreading near fuel line. Ring on left hand, initials M+L. Lena pressed a hand to her mouth. It wasn't just her husband's car. It was him. Every line, every word carried the memory of that night. There were even fragments of dialogue, short, desperate sentences written as if he was reliving them. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her she deserved better. Tears blurred the page. She closed the book and held it to her chest, as if by doing so, she could bridge the years of silence between that night and now. Then she noticed something else, tucked into the back pocket of the journal, folded neatly like an old letter. It was a photo, a man in uniform smiling beside a group of medics. Aaron looked younger, hopeful. Behind him, in faint ink, someone had written, "For those we couldn't save, and the ones we still can." A sound startled her, footsteps crunching on gravel. Lena turned sharply, the notebook still in her hands. Aaron stood a few yards away, holding a plastic bag with groceries. His face was unreadable, but his eyes told her everything. He already knew what she'd found. She froze, words caught in her throat. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." He shook his head gently. "It's all right. I figured you'd want answers." He stepped closer, his boots leaving dark prints in the dust. "That night, I thought if I kept that notebook, maybe I could write my way out of the guilt. But every line just took me back there." Lena swallowed hard. "You carried that pain all this time." "I didn't know who he was," Aaron said softly, "until you said his name. And then it felt like fate. Cruel, maybe, but still fate." She looked down at the journal. "You wrote that he said something before the fire. Tell her she deserved better." Aaron nodded, voice low. He wanted you to live free, not chained to what happened. Her eyes filled again, but this time not from sorrow alone. He was wrong, she whispered, because the man who tried to save him is the reason I still believe people can be good. The silence that followed was heavy but gentle, like the air before a coming storm. Aaron looked away, his jaw tight. I never meant for you to see that journal. It's not a story anyone should have to carry. Maybe not, Lena said, her voice steadier now. But now it's ours to carry, together. For the first time, Aaron's eyes met hers without the weight of shame. There was still grief there, yes, but also something softer, relief. He took the journal from her hands, placed it carefully on the dashboard, and said quietly, "Thank you for not hating me." She managed a faint smile. "You saved what you could. That's more than most people ever try." As the wind picked up, carrying the sound of distant train horns, Aaron looked out over the tracks. "Maybe it's time I stopped running from that night." Lena nodded. "Then stop running alone." They stood side by side as the train thundered past, its roar fading into the distance. Neither spoke, but the silence between them was no longer hollow. Neither of them realized it yet, but the journal, the same book that carried so much pain, had just become the key that would soon bring both redemption and danger into their lives. Because someone else, watching from across the street, had seen Lena enter Aaron's truck, and by nightfall, and so, the gossip in town would turn their fragile truth into something far darker. The next few days brought a strange calm, the kind that comes just before something breaks. Lena went to work as usual, pouring coffee, taking orders, smiling at regulars who didn't smile back quite the same anymore. She could feel it in their eyes, the quiet curiosity, the tilted glances, the soft whispers that followed her every move. Someone had seen her near the railroad tracks with Aaron, and in a small town, that was all it took for a story to grow legs. By noon, the whispers had found their way to Rick. He was wiping down the counter when two women from the morning crowd leaned in close, their voices low but sharp. "Did you hear?" one of them said. "She's been meeting that homeless vet behind the warehouse." Rick pretended not to listen, but his smirk gave him away. When Lena brought him a receipt to sign, he didn't even look up. "So," he said casually, "I guess you've got a new friend in town." She frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Come on, Lena, people talk. You hanging around that drifter, it's not a good look. You've got a kid, remember?" Her stomach tightened. That drifter has a name. And if people have a problem with me helping someone, that's their problem, not mine. Rick let out a small laugh. "Helping? Or hoping? Just don't get yourself dragged into something messy." Lena walked away before he could say more, her hands trembling as she filled another pot of coffee. It wasn't just the words. It was the tone, the smirk, the quiet poison that spread faster than truth ever could. That evening, after closing, she found Aaron sitting outside the diner on the curb, a paper cup of cold coffee beside him. His eyes looked distant, but when he saw her, he managed a faint smile. "Rough day?" he asked. She sighed. "You could say that." He nodded slowly. "They've started talking, haven't they?" Lena didn't answer, but her silence was enough. Aaron took a sip of coffee that had long gone bitter. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to bring trouble to your door." "You didn't," she said firmly. "Their words did." A car drove by, slowing just enough for someone inside to stare before speeding up again. Aaron's eyes followed it, then turned back to her. "You don't have to defend me, Lena. I'm used to being the villain in other people's stories." "Maybe it's time you stopped letting them write it," she replied. He gave a small smile at that, sad but genuine. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the faint hum of crickets from the fields beyond town. The night air carried the smell of rain again, heavy and familiar. Finally, Aaron spoke. "There's something I didn't tell you, about that journal." Lena turned to him, surprised. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "After the accident, I didn't just write to remember. I wrote because someone asked me to file a report. A private investigator. He thought your husband's crash wasn't just bad luck." Her breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I don't know," Aaron said softly. "Maybe nothing. Maybe too much. But there was another car that night, parked on the shoulder. No one ever came forward. I wrote down the license plate, but I never gave it to anyone. I couldn't face another round of questions." Lena's heart pounded. "Do you still have it?" He nodded slowly. It's in the back of the notebook. I didn't think it mattered anymore. She looked away, eyes glistening. All this time, I thought I knew everything about that night. Aaron leaned forward slightly. Sometimes knowing isn't peace, Lena. Sometimes it's just another kind of weight. Before she could answer, the diner door opened. Rick stepped out, keys jangling in his hand, his expression smug. Well, look who's making themselves at home. You two planning to open a repair shop here now? Lena stiffened. Rick, please. He cut her off. Don't worry, I'm not judging. Just don't bring your drama into my diner. Folks are already asking questions. Aaron rose to his feet, his voice steady but low. I didn't come here to cause problems. I'll go. Rick crossed his arms. Good idea. Last thing we need is pity parties on company property. Lena glared at him. You know what your problem is, Rick? You can't stand someone being decent without expecting something in return. Rick's face darkened. Careful, Lena. You've got a job because I let you. Aaron stepped between them, calm but firm. It's fine. I'll leave. Rick smirked, satisfied. Smart man. He turned and went back inside. The door slammed behind him, the echo lingering in the night air. Lena stood there, shaking with quiet anger. Aaron looked at her, his voice softer now. You shouldn't have to fight my battles. She met his gaze. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm fighting my own. He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. All right. He opened his truck door, then paused. I'll bring you that page tomorrow. You deserve to see it. Lena's voice was barely a whisper. Thank you. Aaron started the engine, its tired growl fading into the dark. As the headlights disappeared down the empty street, Lena felt the first tremor of something new. Not just fear or anger, but the sense that everything she thought she'd buried was about to resurface. And far across town, a porch light flicked on. A neighbor, phone in hand, spoke into the receiver in a hushed voice. I saw her again. The waitress. She's with that man from the accident. By morning, everyone in town would know. And the truth, the one written in that forgotten page, was about to wake ghosts no one was ready to face. By sunrise, the air in town already felt different, heavier somehow, as if the rumors from the night before had seeped into the wind itself. At Daisy's diner, conversations paused whenever Lena walked by. Eyes followed her. Voices dropped. Even the regulars, the ones who used to ask about Maya, now stirred their coffee in silence. She tried to focus on work, but her chest felt tight. Every sound seemed sharper. The hiss of the coffee maker, the scrape of forks on plates, Rick's forced laughter echoing from the counter. Then the bell above the door rang. Aaron stepped inside, carrying something wrapped in brown paper. The diner went quiet, the way small towns do when something unexpected happens. He nodded at Lena, but didn't sit. I have what I promised, he said, his voice low but steady. Rick leaned on the counter, smirking. Brave of you to come back here. You like the attention, huh? Aaron didn't look at him. I came to return something. Lena wiped her hands on her apron and met him halfway. Do you want to talk outside? He nodded. They walked to the parking lot, away from the curious eyes pressed to the window. When they reached his truck, he unwrapped the paper. Pfft. Inside was a single sheet, torn from the back of his journal. The paper was creased, the ink faint but still legible. Lena took it carefully, afraid to breathe too hard. Is this the license number? He nodded. I wrote it down the night of the crash. It belonged to a dark sedan, parked 50 yards behind your husband's car. She read the number slowly, her pulse quickening. It wasn't familiar, not at first, but then something flickered in her memory. The diner's delivery van, Rick's. She'd seen that same number stenciled faintly on the side of his vehicle for years. Her breath caught. Aaron, this can't be right. He frowned. What is it? She showed him the page. This number, it's Rick's old van. He said it broke down years ago, the same week Miguel. She couldn't finish the sentence. Aaron's expression hardened. Are you sure? I'm sure. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of wind sweeping across the asphalt filled the silence. Aaron took the paper back, studying it as if it could somehow rewrite itself. If that's true, then he was there that night. Lena shook her head, disbelief and fury twisting inside her. He told everyone he was home. He even came to the funeral. People hide in plain sight, Aaron said quietly, especially when they have something to lose. The diner door opened behind them. Rick stepped out, squinting against the light. Everything all right out here? Lena's fingers tightened around the page before she slipped it into her apron pocket. Fine, she said, forcing her voice steady. Rick's eyes narrowed. Funny. Looks like you're trading secrets. Aaron stepped forward slightly, his tone calm but firm. We were just talking. Rick smirked. That what you call it? Talking? You're not fooling anyone. People are starting to ask why a single mother spends her nights with a guy who lives in a truck. Lena's voice shook, but she didn't back down. You don't get to talk about me like that. Rick laughed, low and cruel. Oh, I do. Especially when your friend here starts digging around in things better left buried. Aaron's eyes flashed. You might want to choose your words carefully. Rick's grin faded for a second, but pride pushed him forward. You think you scare me? You're a broken man living off pity. Before Lena could stop him, Aaron moved, not violently, just enough to close the distance between them. His voice stayed quiet. I don't need to scare you. The truth will do that on its own. Rick took a step back, suddenly unsure. You're crazy, he muttered, and went back inside. Lena exhaled shakily. He knows. Aaron nodded. He's worried. That's good. It means we're right. She looked at him, fear flickering beneath her anger. What are we supposed to do? We can't just walk into the police station with this. No, Aaron said, but we can find out if he's still hiding something. I've dealt with cowards before. They always leave loose ends. Lena pressed her hands together, trying to calm the storm building inside her. I just want to know the truth, she whispered. For my husband. For Maya. Aaron's gaze softened. Then that's what we'll do. She looked down at the folded page in her pocket. Fragile, old, but powerful enough to unravel everything she thought she knew. Behind them, the diner's blinds shifted slightly. Someone was watching from inside, the glint of a phone camera catching the light. Rick wasn't the only one paying attention now. By sunset, the image of Lena and Aaron standing close in the parking lot would circle every phone in town. And what started as a whisper was about to become a storm. And still, they had no idea that the real truth behind that night, the one hidden in Rick's guilt, was far darker than either of them imagined. By the next morning, the story had spread through town like wildfire. At the grocery store, two women whispered near the produce aisle, glancing toward Lena as she passed with a basket of milk and cereal. At the gas station, a man laughed under his breath, muttering something about that waitress and her war hero boyfriend. Everywhere she went, eyes followed her. Every smile she'd once earned with kindness now turned into suspicion. When she arrived at the diner that afternoon, Rick was waiting at the counter. His arms were crossed, his face stretched into a grin that didn't reach his eyes. You're late, he said. I had to drop Maya at school, she replied, setting down her purse. Rick leaned closer. Word travels fast in this town. You might want to be careful about the company you keep. People are starting to think you're running some kind of scam with that guy. Her chest tightened. A scam? He shrugged. That's what they're saying? That you're after sympathy, donations, maybe even blackmail? I don't know, but if I were you, I'd stay away from that man before your name ends up in the paper. Lena's voice trembled, but she didn't back down. You're afraid, aren't you? Rick's grin faded. Of what? Of the truth. His eyes flickered, just for a second. A flash of something nervous, almost guilty, before his mask slid back into place. Watch yourself, Lena, he said quietly. Some stories don't end well for people who dig too deep. She turned away before her anger broke into words she couldn't take back. By evening, the whispers had turned into something worse. Someone had printed the photo of her and Aaron standing by his truck and pinned it to the diner's bulletin board with the words, "Is this what charity looks like?" scrawled underneath. Lena ripped it down, her hand shaking. Rick just watched from the corner, pretending not to care. That night, she drove to the edge of town, to the warehouse where Aaron's truck was parked. The rain had started again, thin at first, then heavier, blurring the world into streaks of gray. Aaron was sitting on the tailgate, a flashlight balanced beside him, working on a small engine. He looked up when she arrived. You shouldn't be here, he said softly. They'll only talk more. They already are, she said, voice breaking. But I don't care anymore. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. I found something. From his pocket, he pulled a faded receipt. It was in my old field jacket, from a repair shop on the night of the accident. Someone signed it. Rick's name. Lena took it, her heart pounding. The date matched exactly. So he was there. Yeah, Aaron said quietly. He must have seen the crash before I did. Or maybe... He hesitated. Maybe he caused it. Lena's breath caught. You think he hit Miguel? Aaron looked down, rain dripping from the brim of his cap. I don't know, but I know guilt when I see it, and I've seen it in his eyes since the first day we met. Lightning flashed, followed by the low growl of thunder. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Lena whispered, "We need to take this to the police." Aaron shook his head. "Not yet, we need proof. If we go now, he'll twist it, say we're trying to ruin him. We need something he can't deny." Lena pressed the receipt to her chest. "How do we get that?" Aaron's jaw tightened. "He'll slip. People like him always do when they're cornered." Before she could respond, a pair of headlights appeared in the distance, growing brighter, faster, until they stopped just yards away. Rick stepped out of his truck, the rain plastering his hair to his forehead. "So, this is where you meet now," he said, his tone mocking. "Couldn't even wait for work hours, huh?" Lena froze. Aaron stood between them. "You followed her?" Rick's laugh was sharp. "I didn't have to. Everyone saw her drive this way." He took a step closer, his voice lowering. "You think you're some kind of hero, huh? Digging through my past, waving that journal around like it means something. Let me tell you what really happened that night." Aaron's eyes narrowed. "Then tell us." Rick smirked. "Your husband was drunk, Lena, swerving all over the road. I honked, tried to stop him. He lost control, flipped the car. I called for help. You can ask anyone." Lena's voice trembled. "That's not true." Rick stepped closer, his tone tightening. "You think you know the truth? You weren't there." Aaron didn't move, his voice calm but sharp as glass. "But you were. And you didn't help him, did you?" Rick's jaw clenched. "You don't know what I did." Aaron held out the receipt. "This says otherwise. You were at the repair shop that night, fixing the dent on your van an hour after the crash." For the first time, Rick's expression cracked. His lips parted, but no words came. The silence between them stretched, filled only by the pounding rain. Lena's voice cut through it, soft, broken, but steady. "You left him to die." Rick's hand twitched at his side. "You don't know what that kind of night does to a man." "No," Aaron said, stepping closer, "but I know what kind of man runs from it." Rick's breath quickened. "You think you're better than me? You don't know what it's like to live with that image in your head every night." "I tried to forget. I tried." He stopped, the confession slipping out before he could swallow it back. Lena took a step forward, tears streaming down her face, mixing with the rain. "You could have saved him." Rick looked at her, eyes wild, haunted. "I couldn't save anyone," he shouted. "He was already gone." The words echoed across the empty lot, bouncing off the wet metal walls of the warehouse. Aaron's voice was quiet but final. "Then at least tell the truth now." Rick stood there, chest heaving, the rain falling harder. For a long moment, he looked like a man caught between guilt and pride, between running and redemption. But when his gaze flicked toward Aaron's truck, toward the journal, the fear returned. Without another word, he turned and climbed back into his vehicle. The engine roared to life, tires spinning in the mud as he sped away into the storm. Lena stood frozen, her breath ragged. "He'll come after us." Aaron nodded. "Let him. This time we won't be the ones hiding." The rain poured harder, washing over them, but neither moved. In that moment, they both knew. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one about to break inside the town. And soon, everyone would learn what Rick had done that night. By dawn, the storm had passed, but the town wasn't calm. It was waiting, tense, uneasy, like a crowd before a verdict. Aaron barely slept. He spent the night parked outside the diner, the journal and receipt spread out beside him, staring at them under the dim glow of the dashboard light. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the look on Rick's face. The moment guilt cracked through his bravado. When morning came, Lena knocked softly on his window. She looked exhausted, her hair damp from the mist, but her eyes were clear. "We can't wait anymore," she said. "He'll twist the story if we stay quiet." Aaron nodded. "Then we take it to the sheriff." The drive there was silent. The roads were still wet, reflecting the pale morning sky. When they arrived, the small-town station felt almost too still, the kind of quiet that makes every footstep sound like a warning. Sheriff Davis, a man in his late 50s with weary eyes and a slow drawl, listened carefully as Aaron laid out everything: the journal, the note, the receipt, and finally Rick's outburst in the rain. He didn't interrupt, but his expression shifted from doubt to something more serious as the story unfolded. When they finished, Davis leaned back in his chair. "That's a heavy accusation," he said. You're saying Rick Collins caused that crash 20 years ago and covered it up? Aaron nodded. I'm saying he was there, and he's been lying ever since. The sheriff turned to Lena. You believe this? I do, she said quietly, because the man he killed was my husband. A heavy silence filled the room. Davis rubbed his chin, then stood. Stay here, he said. I'll make a few calls. An hour later, they heard raised voices from the hallway. The sheriff's deputy entered with Rick, still in his work clothes, his face pale and angry. You've got no right dragging me in here, he shouted. You're taking the word of a drifter and a waitress over mine. Davis motioned for him to sit. We just want to talk. There's a few things we need cleared up. Rick paced instead. This is a setup. They're trying to ruin me. Aaron spoke calm and steady. You did that yourself. Rick spun around. You think you're some kind of saint? You didn't see what I saw that night. That man was gone before I even reached him. Lena's voice cracked. You left him. You didn't even try. Rick slammed his fist on the desk. What was I supposed to do? The car was on fire. I panicked. I hit him. All right. I didn't mean to. He came out of nowhere. And when I saw the flames, I froze. The words hung in the air, a confession born from exhaustion and guilt. The sheriff's pen stopped mid-note. The room went still. Rick's shoulders slumped. I told myself calling it an accident would make it easier to live with, but it didn't. Every time I saw her face, every time I drove past that road, it came back. Lena covered her mouth, tears streaming silently. For years, she'd carried questions with no answers, pain with no closure. Now finally, there it was. The truth. Ugly, but real. The sheriff stood, his voice firm. Rick Collins, you're under arrest for leaving the scene of an accident and obstruction of justice. Rick didn't fight. He just sank into the chair, the fight gone out of him, his eyes hollow. When they led him away, Lena stood frozen. Aaron placed a hand gently on her shoulder. It's over, he said softly. She shook her head, tears falling. No, it's just finally true. Outside, the sky had cleared completely. The morning sun was warm, the first Lena had felt in a long time. Reporters had already gathered outside the diner by noon, news spreading faster than ever, but this time, not as rumor. People looked at her differently now, not with suspicion, but with quiet respect, the kind reserved for someone who had survived something impossible and still found the strength to face it. That evening, Aaron came by the diner again, this time without his truck packed like a home. He'd cleaned up, wearing an old jacket that actually fit. Thought you might want this back, he said, handing her the journal. She smiled faintly. Keep it. You wrote the truth in there. It belongs to both of us now. He hesitated. What are you gonna do now? Lena looked out the window, where the sunset painted the sky in gold and pink. Maybe I'll finally stop living in that night. Maybe start over, for Maya, for me. Aaron nodded, his voice low. You gave me a reason to stop running too. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence between them wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful, earned. As he turned to leave, Lena called out softly, Aaron. He stopped. You didn't just help me find the truth, she said. You helped me remember that not all miracles are loud. Some just arrive quietly, in the form of someone who refuses to walk away. Aaron smiled, the kind that reached his eyes this time. Then maybe that's the kind worth keeping. He walked off into the fading light, the sound of his boots fading into the hush of evening. Lena stood there, breathing deep, feeling something she hadn't felt in years, peace. For the first time, the truth had set her free. Weeks passed, and the town slowly began to quiet again. The gossip faded, the whispers died down, and the same people who had once judged Lena now greeted her with hesitant smiles. But she no longer needed their approval. She had already found something greater, peace born from truth. Rick's confession spread through every corner of town. For many, it was shocking. For Lena, it was closure. He was sentenced, and though justice felt bittersweet, it was enough to know that the lie no longer owned her life. Yet forgiveness, she realized, wasn't about him. It was about freeing herself from the hate she had carried for so long. One quiet Sunday morning, Lena stood by the roadside where it had all happened, the same curve where the world had shattered years ago. The air was calm, filled with the faint chirping of birds, the kind of peace that hides inside silence. Maya held her hand, her small fingers warm and trusting. A single wildflower grew near the ditch, its petals trembling in the breeze. Lena knelt, touching it gently. You see this place, honey? She said softly. This is where your father became part of the sky." Maya looked up, her eyes full of innocence. "Is that why you come here?" "Yes," Lena whispered. "To remember, but not to be sad anymore." Behind them, a truck pulled up. It was Aaron. He stepped out slowly, careful not to disturb the quiet, holding 2 cups of coffee. He offered one to her with a small smile. "Didn't want you standing here alone." She smiled back. "You always seem to know when I need that." He looked at the roadside, then at her. "You ever think about leaving? Starting fresh somewhere else?" "Maybe," she said, "but not because I want to run. I just want to build something new, not built on loss." Aaron nodded. "That's a good reason." They stood in silence for a while, watching the morning light filter through the trees. The same sun that had once watched tragedy now shone gently on their faces. It was strange, Lena thought, how time could turn the same road that took something away into the place that finally gave something back. She turned to him. "Do you still blame yourself for that night?" Aaron took a long breath before answering. "I used to, every day, but lately I've started to think maybe I wasn't meant to save him. Maybe I was meant to find you." The words lingered, not as romance, but as truth, the kind that grows from shared pain. Lena's eyes softened. Then maybe that's the miracle we were both waiting for. A breeze swept across the road, carrying the scent of rain and wild grass. It brushed against her face like a blessing, quiet and invisible. Aaron turned toward Maya, who was now gathering pebbles and flowers into a small pile. "She's got your strength," he said. Lena smiled faintly. "No, she's got his heart." They stayed until the light shifted, the morning turning gold. When they finally walked back to the truck, Lena glanced one last time at the road. For years, she had imagined it as the end of everything, but now it looked different. Not a graveyard of memory, but the beginning of something alive. As they drove away, the town rolled past. The diner, the quiet houses, the people pretending not to stare. Lena didn't mind. She had nothing left to hide. That night, she sat at her kitchen table, writing in a clean new notebook. At the top of the page, she wrote a single line. "Some miracles don't bring back the dead. They bring back the living." She paused, smiling softly to herself, and kept writing. Not as a widow, not as a victim, but as someone reborn through truth and forgiveness. And somewhere out there, under the same wide sky, Aaron watched the lights from her window and felt something he hadn't felt in years: belonging. Because sometimes redemption isn't about undoing the past. It's about choosing kindness when the world expects bitterness. It's about rebuilding the heart piece by piece until it remembers how to love again. Lena closed her notebook and whispered a quiet prayer, not for vengeance or justice, but for peace. For everyone who had ever lost, and everyone still learning how to begin again. Then, with a calm voice meant for the audience she didn't see but somehow felt, she asked, "Do you believe forgiveness is the truest form of strength?" She smiled, the kind that comes after tears. "Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time, here where stories find their peace." The end.